All right, we're now learning book Torah Or, which was written by the first Rebbe of Chabad, the first Rebbe of Chabad. After him came 6 more Rebbes of Chabad. And each one was the Moshiach of his generation. And as we've learned so many times, the main thing of Moshiach is education. To educate people to understand what is God, feel God, to feel they're being created, and to act and speak and think accordingly. And Mashiach will fill the whole world with the knowledge of God. It's day at Hashem. Everyone will feel the Creator. Huh? Everyone will feel the Creator that's creating them. And even more, everybody will feel why they're being created. They're being created, Jews to do the Torah, and the non-Jews also to do the Torah, what's relevant to them, 7 Noahide commandments. Okay, but in order to do that, you have to have a sort of a different sensitivity to what's going on over here, because you cannot sense God in the way that you sense like music or something like that, because God is creating us. He's creating me and you. That's infinitely close to us. So therefore, we have to get sort of reoriented. In order to do that, we have to understand a little bit of the ideas of the spiritual worlds. The spiritual worlds have more of a comprehension of what godliness is than we do, even though in fact we're closer to God than they are, because the whole purpose, the reason that all those upper worlds were created was for us, that we should be here and we should make the right choices in life. We should transform this world, so to speak, to do something that God himself can't do. God can't transform darkness to light, because by God there's no darkness, there's no ignorance. God hasn't got evil impulses or urges to worship idols or to murder people or to be licentious or something like that. God doesn't have those. It's not Greek mythology or something, Bhavdil. That God has these natural impulses or whatever. So God is creating us. That's pretty good. He's creating us. Can you figure out you can't create a grain of sand? I can't anyway. Maybe you can. I can't create a grain of sand. As far as I know, nobody can create anything, because creation means you're taking nothing and making from nothing something. And we don't know what nothing is. Well, we were born into something. Okay, so the fact is that God creates the world. That's the 4th of the 10 commandments, created the world in 7 days. The first commandment is that God took us out of Egypt. And of course, God gave us the Torah. And the second of the 10 commandments is you're not allowed to worship any other God except for the Creator that took us out of Egypt. So the Creator means that he's infinitely close to us. And we should feel it, right? But we don't. And that he took us out of Egypt means that God will take us and help us to feel him. He'll take us out of all of our limitations. Okay, here we go. So the first discourse that was written over here is a little bit Kabbalistic, so I'm not going to go into it now. Maybe we'll see it later here. I'll show you what it is here. It says to understand, Yegalale time of the Bisvei Sarnama is talking about the name of God and the last letter of God's name, which is doubled, and that's the whole thing of Marat HaMachpelah, the double cave where Abraham bought to bury his wife. That's already, he knew that Adam and his wife were buried there. That's why it's called Kiryat Arba. It's buried in Arba. So he explains it a little bit Kabbalistically, but I'm not going to do that today. We'll see. Maybe we'll do it tomorrow, but let's go. Here we go. Today we're going to do something that's a little bit, let's say, closer to us. And no, let's say more hands-on than yesterday. And this is what it says in Pirkei Avot, in the Ethics of the Fathers. It's a Mishnah. Anyway, in Jewish literature. And it says, Yafe Sha'achat. It is better one moment. But Tshuva Shah means 1 hour, but it really means one moment. The word Shah also means to turn, like you turn to someone. Shah. We learned what that with Cain and Hevel, and that God turned to Hevel's offering, it says. In any case, it's better one moment of tshuva and maisim tovim, of return to God and doing good deeds, ba'olam hazeh, in this world, Mikol Chai Olam Haba, from all of the life of the world to come. Okay, what is the world to come? Here, there's three meanings of the world. The word, the term world to come. One is after we die. Probably you've figured it out by now that people don't live forever. So after you die, so what happens? So on that fear and uncertainty are all the religions are based. Believe in me and you go to heaven. Believe in me, you go to heaven. And the next religion says, no, don't listen to him. Believe in me and you go to heaven. And the third religion says, those two are lying. Believe in me, you go to heaven. So there's like hundreds of religions and thousands of denominations of religions and different types of religions. And all of them have this one big goal, and that is to get you into heaven. You go into heaven, and there you are for all eternity. Makes sense. How long does a person live in this world? 100 years, whatever. You go to heaven, you're there for 1,000,000 years. Who knows how long you're there, right, for heaven. So it's worthwhile to make a little effort in this world, a little investment, and go into the world to come. What's in the world to come? So we'll talk about that a little bit. But if you can imagine pleasure in this world, what people are willing to do for pleasure, for comfort, for security in this world, well, after a person dies, if he did good things, and who knows what these good things are, all the religions are vying for these good things. So of course, Judaism also puts in its candidacy for this, place in the world to come. So if you do what it says in the Torah, then you go to heaven. You go to heaven. What is exactly there in heaven? What is in heaven? If you take all the pleasures in this world and roll them all up together, all the drugs and all the this and all the terrible things in this world, and the good things also, pleasures that you have in this world, good, healthy pleasures, seeing your family grow and your children get married and, being honest and all the pleasures you can possibly imagine in this world, and roll them all up together for 70 years, it doesn't equal one moment in the world to come. So it's worthwhile to go to the world to come, right? So that's the whole card that the carrot in front of that's hanging in front of the goat, that's tied to the wagon. If to hang a carrot, that's the thing that makes all these religions work. Want to go to heaven? Yeah. Do what I say, you're going to go to heaven. So you work, go to heaven. But it's a good point. Listen, it's worthwhile. It's worthwhile to forego a little bit of pleasure here. And then when you get up there, you get the jackpot. Right? You go with them. Well, in Judaism, it says it's better one moment of returning to God, in other words, being aware of God and doing good deeds in this physical world than all of the life of all the world to come. Not just one moment in the world to come. You get a little high, of 10 minutes or something like that in the world to come. All of the life of the world to come. All billion years, a trillion years, whatever you want to call it. In this world, better one moment in this world, doing good deeds. Now, do you feel that? Do you see that? No, we say the feeling, the pleasure that is available, that you awaken in this world by doing good deeds is so infinitely great that we can't comprehend it. We can't comprehend the pleasure of after you die. You have to die in order to get it, right? The body prevents us, right? Our body, we're attached to our body. We think in physical terms. We can't think in spiritual terms. We don't know what spiritual is, right? There's a lot, therefore it's very easy to fool us. Some faker comes along and he talks quietly and he has a big robes or something like that. And everybody is around him and they're all, bowing down to him. So you figure, okay, this guy, maybe he knows something. I don't know anything. So he goes, spiritual. We don't understand what the spiritual is. And a person that comes and says he does understand the spiritual, so it's very easy to fool us, right? Spiritual, because we don't know what spiritual is. How much more so we don't know. What does it mean? All of the spiritual pleasures and all of the worlds we get, we're in by doing a good deed in this world. How can it possibly be? So it says, listen, if you don't understand, you cannot comprehend the pleasures of the world to come. For sure, you can't comprehend this, but you get it. You get it. You get it right now. Why? We'll see in a moment. But the essence of the thing is that in the world to come, in heaven, you get pleasure. But in this world, you give God pleasure. God, you make the creator of the universe happy. And that's pretty good. That's why we're here. And after all, we owe the creator of the universe everything. He gives us everything for free. Even if we do all the sins, and God forbid, all the sins in the world, God is still keeping us alive. That's a sign that he loves us, keeps us alive. We still have a chance. Not that he loves what we're doing. Could be that we're doing exactly the opposite, but we still have a chance. We still have a chance to turn back turn back our lot. That's pretty good. So that's what his tshuva means. Tshuva means turning back our how do you say, our fortune, our lot, even if we did bad things in the past. So it's possible to correct what we did, or at least to make it up in the future. We can do good deeds instead of bad deeds. Maybe our good deeds will outweigh our bad deeds. Sometimes it's even possible to transform the bad deeds into good deeds. Right? How? By regret. Regret, because you regret so much what you did. So therefore, you learn you can't really trust yourself. And everything you do, you check yourself to see if this is really what God wants or not. Tshuva, returning. Return to your godly consciousness. Return to your senses. Returning to your creator in this world. And doing good deeds in this world is better than all of the world to come. It's pretty good. That should be enough for this class, but it's not. Listen to this. Tzorech Lahavin, we have to understand. Let's make this a little bigger here. There we go. One more. Why not? Why not? If it's free, let's make it bigger. Here we go. Tzorech Lahavin, we have to understand what's better to do good deeds in this world, and the reward in this world is better than all of the world to come. How can this be? Tzorech Lahavin, we have to understand. Halo tachlis tshuva. Is it not so that the ultimate of returning to God and doing good deeds, who is shemayem nasa levushim, that when you do good deeds, it makes garments. It makes garments. L'neshama, to the soul, shetochel le'anos, that it's able to appreciate and get pleasure, miziva shechina, from the ray of God's presence in the world to come. K'maimar Zohar, like it says in the Zohar, like it says, Avram Zoken Bo B'Yamim. It's in this week's Torah portion. Avram was old and he was coming in days. What does that mean, he was coming in days? He was old. What does it mean he was coming in days? What does that mean? It says, Be'inun Yomim Elohim, we're talking about these upper days, Huli. Vaile, in the Zohar, it says, woe is it to the person, La'au Gavra, to that person, the Gora Yomim, that is missing days, La'ela, the upper spiritual days. The Kad Ba'inan La'al Bisha, because they are required to clothe, to dress a person, Be'inan Yomim, Yomim, the Pagam Yomim, in these days. And what does it mean? A person's put into the world, you get a certain number of days in this world, right? How many days are in a year? 365? Multiply that by, let's say, 70, 80, 90, 100, right? You're going to live 100 years. So multiply 365 by 100, and you get, what do you get? 36,500 days. You get 36,500 days to do what God wants. Do what God wants. Every day has its own obligations, especially Jews. There is obligations every day. You pray in the morning, you pray in the afternoon, you pray in the evening, you have to put on tefillin in the daytime. There's certain commandments you can only do in the day, sometimes some things in the night, learning Torah in the nighttime, saying Shema, helping other people, etc. By non-Jews, there's also what's called 7 Noahide commandments. In any case, these commandments that we do, those of the non-Jews are not the same as the Jews, but nevertheless, they're still good deeds, and they're garments for the world to come. The Maimonides says that a non-Jew that does this, his 7 Noahide commandments, he has a place in heaven. So it says, oh, by the way, I didn't finish that. There's 3 meanings of the world. What does it mean, world to come? World to come is after you die, is one of them. Another one is the days of the Mashiach, and the third one is the raising of the dead. Okay, but now we're talking about the first 2. Going to heaven or the days of the Mashiach. So it says, here we have this physical world. Mashiach is going to reveal to us how incredibly important is this physical world. It says in the Mishnah, this physical world is greater than all of the world to come. Huh? What's so big about the world to come? We'll talk about that in 1 second, but says the Rebbe, 1 second, I got a question. After a person dies, he goes to heaven. When he goes to heaven, he has to have the proper garments to understand, right? It's like going into let's say the stock market, right? It's going into the stock market. Your father bought 500 shares in who knows what, in something, Apple. So you go to the stock market and you're there and you don't understand anything. You don't understand anything what's going on. And your stock is going up and it's going up, right? Should you buy? Should you sell? You don't know what does it mean buy? What does it sell? You don't know. You just never learned what's going on in the stock market. You have no idea. As a result, because you don't know what's going on, so everything just passes you by totally. But you can get all the good in the world. Nothing. The same thing is after a person dies, so he goes up to heaven. If he has the proper understanding, the proper garments, if you want to call it, if in this world he devoted himself a little bit to God's things, to something infinite, a little bit, then when he goes to heaven, so he's not so connected to his past, to his body. That's like what hell is. What's hell? A person gets connected to his body. He goes up to heaven, he's got no body, right? He's got no body. What's he going to do, right? He has all these desires, all these burning desires. A person has all sorts of desires and things. He can sit in his house and he sees a movie, sees a picture. All of a sudden he has these desires and lust and things like that. He can sit in his house and think about how he wants to kill his next door neighbor. He drives, his next door neighbor isn't there. There's nothing there, just in his mind is going, well, the same thing happens, but at least in this world, he can, God forbid, he can carry out his evil deeds, whatever he wants, his evil thoughts. But in heaven, the thoughts burn him up, right? He's got all these thoughts and he can't take it out on his body. He can't do anything. So if a person in this world was only thinking physical things, so when he goes to heaven, he's got nothing to do up there. What's he going to do? Right? It's terrible. He sits and he sees all these good things. He doesn't understand what's going on. It's just a terrible cacophony of confusion. And sometimes even worse, the sins come to visit him and etc., but not to go into that. If, on the other hand, a person, when he was in this physical world, he dealt with things that were eternal, right? Doing good, thinking good, helping others, doing what God wants, is then when he gets up to heaven, so he was already used to not being selfish. He loses his body, so he's got a pure soul, but in this world, he didn't give anything to his soul. If you do give things to your soul, then that's called a garment. It says in the book, the Zohar, that woe is it to the person that God gave him a certain number of days to live. And every day he was supposed to make garments and he didn't make the garments. When his soul goes up to heaven, so he's up there naked. He's got nothing whatsoever. He's got no garments. Maybe he has all these dirty, soiled, the smelly garments of the not good deeds and thoughts and actions and words and the libel and slander, things that he said in this world. Now, we got to get this thing straight over here because it's very important. A person is judged only according to his deeds. Only according to deeds, thought, speech, and action. You are not judged according to what you believe. You happen to believe in your religion. Very nice. It doesn't care about who you believe in or what you believe in, right? Your beliefs, it cares about what you did. If you did, in the name of your religion, you murdered, you raped, you did all sorts of things, you can believe as much as you want to, right? It's the same thing as believing in Stalin. If you did bad things, you thought bad thoughts, you didn't, and who decides what's good and what's bad? That's what the 7 Noahide commandments are about. But they have this huge religion. There's like 2 billion, 2.5, 3 billion people. They say it doesn't make any difference what you do. If you believe in this guy, then you go to heaven. This is a big, huge, evil lie. And it's destroying the life of who knows how many millions, billions of people through the life. That's because it's a huge, incredible lie. And Mashiach will come and reveal this lie, because the fact is people are judged only according to their deeds and speech and action. To a certain degree, also what you believe in. If you do these good deeds only for yourself to go into heaven, so that sort of takes away, the genuine of your acts. In any case, God knows how to weigh these things out. I don't know how God does it, but and the general principles is that there's sometimes good deeds can weigh out bad deeds and bad deeds, but for sure, doing bad deeds and believing in somebody or somebody else is going to bring forgiveness for you or something like that, this is a big lie, and it's not so. So it all depends on a person's deeds and actions. When you do good deeds in this world, then it's garments for the world to come, going to heaven. So how can it possibly say that doing good deeds itself is higher than going to heaven? That good deeds are only a preparation for heaven. The answer is like this. Behold, Inyan Ziva Shechina, this idea that we get pleasure from the ray of the Shechina of God's presence in the world to come after you die. Einu kamo, it is not. Kamo is pashtus chayas elokus. It's not like how God enlivens the worlds. Kamo shekatuv, like it says, va'ata machayas kulam, that you enliven everything. Okay, we're talking about God here. We're talking about the Creator. Huh? We're talking about the Creator. God creates you. If you're watching this video, then God creates you. You are being created by God. Even if you're not watching the video, God is creating you. You're just not hearing me say it. But the fact is that you are feeling God say it. God is creating you with His word, and He's enlivening you. He is enlivening you. Like it says, Ata mechayet kulam. God, you enliven everything. This is the God everyone is supposed to worship. Everyone will worship. That's the idea of Mashiach. Everyone will worship only the Creator. Creator. Ata machayes kulam, you enliven everything. Sha'achayus alukus, that the godly life, amitlabish toch olamos, which is in the world's eno musag vanira. It's so incredibly real that we can't understand it or feel it. Don't feel bad if you don't see God or you don't feel God, because I also don't see God and I also don't feel God. But everybody will. Kamashal, like it says, he's pashtas achayas and neshama tochaguf. God, the fact, the life force you get in the world to come is not the same life force that enlivens the body. Bischalkos evorim, in the different limbs. Bavadei achayas ruchani lo shayach chlal sheyeh bo gamkein ischalkos achayas lechalukim. Like your arm has a certain type of life in it, and your eye has a certain type of life. So there's one, so to speak, type of life in your arm and one type of life in your eye. But it's not that way by God. God does not divide it up. Not only does God have no form, but even spiritual has no form. It doesn't fit into any vessels. Of course, we did learn that there's what's called 10 spheres of God. We learned last week, right? Okay, so now we're getting into a little bit of Kabbalistic ideas over here, which are necessary if you want to at least believe that God is one. We talked about this before. God creates everything. He's above everything. But also God is within every detail, and He cares about every detail. We learned about that last week. Remember, with the eyes of God, the shotatim, shotatot, and the vessels and the lights and the power going up, power going down. God coming in to see what was going in Sodom, He had to come down. But all these ideas that we have about God and God's personality and and how God is involved in the world and how God took the Jews out of Egypt and how He provided for them and how He provides for us and He lives it. Don't think that in any way means that God has some sort of a body or a physical form to Him. He creates everything, and He creates everything. He creates man in His image. So God has an image, right? God forbid God doesn't have an image, but that's ridiculous. But it says in the Torah that He does have an image. Of course He does, if it says that He has an image. So God does have an image, right? What are you talking about, God has an image? You don't know what you're talking about. God is infinite. So He doesn't have an image? Of course He doesn't have an image. But it says in the Torah He does. So He does. So He does. What does it mean? What's going on? So the answer is that this is basically not understandable. This is the secret of faith. But it gives us faith in God that He is involved in every detail in the world, and we can and we must pray to Him, and He will answer our prayers the way He wants. So God does react to the world, and God does answer our prayers, and we can have an effect on God. But at the same time, God is totally infinite. In fact, that's part of his infiniteness, that he's not limited to being spiritual. Okay, so let's go back. Here we are. Our soul is in our body. It's something like how God is in the world, right? It says, yeah, it's something like it, but don't take it too literally. Why? Because the effect of life in our limbs, nikar v'nira, is visible. Of a mahut va'atzmut achayut, but the essence of the soul, eino nira v'nikra klal, is not seen at all. We talked about that remember last week we talked about the soul and the personality and the body. And similarly, chayas alokus, the life force of God, hamachaya kol olamos, which enlivens all the worlds, bal gavul, that they are limited. V'tachlit, bal gavul, v'tachlit, the worlds have a limit and boundaries. Bavadai ein b'chayas aruchni, the spiritual power which enlivens them is not limited. It's not limited and bounded. Derech Mashal, for instance, Chayos Amachaya Ta'igul, Kedur Hashemayim, the life force which enlivens the universe. Bavadai lo yitachen, it's not possible to say Shagam Achayot Aruchni, that also the spiritual power, who b'tamunat eagle, is round. Let's take the example, the universe, the moon, right? The moon goes around the earth, What makes it go around the earth? It's a sphere. What enlivens this sphere, this path of the moon that goes around? The force that enlivens it. But it's not God is standing up there with this, this sort of string, and he's making the world go around. Well, what is it making going around? What's going on? It's some spiritual power. This spiritual power obviously cannot be detected. It's not a spiritual circle. What is a spiritual circle? We don't. Who knows what? This is, therefore, we see not only is God unlimited, but also the spiritual power which God creates and enlivens the world is also unlimited. Rakshi Spashasachai is just how God's the emanation of God's life force. Who Tamunas Kli Makabel. It happens to be that God is able to enliven things which are a circle or a line, or even though the power which is in them, the life itself is not limited and visible. Okay, so let's take our arm, your hand, right? You have a hand, you move your hand, right? So there's a spiritual power which is moving your hand. This is, it's my nerves. No, it's not so. There's a life force, right? A person, God forbid, he's dead. So he's got his nerves are all there, everything is there, but it's just not moving, right? Come on, get up. Can't move, right? Beating a dead horse, like they say, right? You can beat all you want to. All of the horse is there, and the muscles are there, and the nerves are there, and the bones are there. Everything is there, but it's just dead, right? Okay, the soul of a horse does not look like a horse. The soul of a horse. Same thing, the soul of a person doesn't look like a person. What does it look like? Right? What does it look like? It's not in a form. It's a totally different thing that we can understand. From this, we can understand, how much more so, the Targum of Ziv Yakara, that this ray of godliness, Shehu Rak Ziv, it's just a ray of godliness alone, because see, it says that the Shemayim, at the Or16a, Malay. On the other hand, it says that the heavens and the earth, I fill up. So God does fill up the world, huh? God, it's a sentence. At the Shemayim, at the earth, Ani Malay, I fill. But the both of them are true. On one hand, God has not got any form. He does not fill up the world like our soul fills up our arm. On the other hand, it says that God does fill the world. Also, another thing, it says that what is enlivening the world is just a ray of God, Ziv. And here when it says that the heavens and the earth, I fill up, God says, I'm personally myself. So what's going on? We have rays of God, and we have God himself, and God doesn't fill the world, and God does fill the world. What's happening? God does have a form. He fills up the world. God doesn't have a form. The both of them are true. Like it says, like we said before, that's what the rabbis say. But the place where you find the greatness of God, there you find God's humility. What does it mean? Sovereign, not like the world thinks. That the greatness of God is called Mashu Yisbrech Machai is called Olmos. What's the greatness of God? What does everybody think? The greatness of God is that God does things that I can't do. He enlivens and creates all of the worlds. That's God's greatness. Huh? You have any idea how big the sun is in our solar system? Where our sun in the solar system, that's only like 1/millionth as big. I'm just saying, I'm not an astronomer. 1/millionth as big as the sun, which is in, solar system number 5 million. You go over to this star, turn left. There it is, 1,000,000 times bigger. And it has its own planets and its own galaxies and its own whatever they're called. This galaxies and things. And you know how many stars there are? Billions and billions upon billions and billions. We don't even know how many there are. And God creates the whole business. That is the greatness of God. You can't create nothing. You can't create a grain of sand. You can't create nothing whatsoever. You can't create anything. Even a thought, you can't create a thought. You take life energy and you transform it. You can transform one thing to another. But to create, you can't create anything. And God is not just creating, He's creating everything. That's the greatness of God, right? Exactly the opposite. That God creates the worlds. Zil Yurid Daitzlo. This is a descent by God. The physical world here is like nothing compared to the spiritual worlds. It says one angel is 3 times as big as the whole universe. Does that make any sense? And there's an infinite number of angels. Of course, it makes no sense. And God is creating all these angels. That's God's greatness, right? Wrong. That's also not God's greatness. That is a tremendous descent for God. Shemashpilat atzmo. He comes down. Umitlabesh almost, and he goes into all the worlds. In order to enliven them and to make them exist. Much could do that. What it says, that you enliven everything. We're not saying, wow, God, you are so great. You enliven the whole world. It's good for a beginning. It impresses us. But don't think that that's God. That's just one of the things that God does, one of the tricks He does. That God's greatness is infinite. And to His understanding, there's no counting. This is, we're saying, how humble you are, God. His humility. That God can come down. That's talking about the creation, but the idea of the world to come, there you get pleasure from what you do. Whose hasag is now you're getting a little bit of a grasp of the essence of God in this physical world, so we can appreciate what God does. Well, 1 second. אני מוסר שיעור בבקשה תצלצל בעוד 45 דקות. טוב? 45 דקות. תודה. Think that helped? Didn't help at all. We'll see. Okay. Here's a big secret. Listen to this, my friends. God creates the world, right? He created the world and He put us in the world. There's all these angels and worlds and spheros and this. Why did He do all this stuff? Why did He create all the worlds? For us. The world will be down here and we will make the right decisions. We'll use our free will and make the right decisions. And sometimes that is very, very difficult. We see that that's the essence of basis of Judaism, that God gave Abraham 10 awesome, terrible, soul-wrenching tests that any normal person would say, okay, that's it, enough, right? He's 99 years old. He serves God 99 years old. Abraham says, what now? God says, okay, circumcise yourself. So you think Abraham would say, What? Come on, are you normal? I mean, what type of a thing is that? What are you, what are you thinking? God, that's what you're thinking about. I have to circumcise myself. Come on, let's, make a battle against 1,000,000 angels or something like that. That's what I have to do, circumcise myself. That's it. Right? Abraham didn't ask any questions. He didn't have any problems. He asked, how do you do it? Right? That's they had to have help. Sir, no problem. Circumcise yourself, no problem. Right? By means of that, you're going to give birth to Yitzchak, and then you're going to have the Jewish people, no problem. Terrible test. Any normal person would say, listen, God, you want to, circumcise? You circumcise me. I'll go to sleep. I'll wake up in the morning. You do it. Huh? I'm going to circumcise myself. 37 years later, 38 years later, when Yitzchak was 37 years old, he's the promise of Judaism. God says, before he gets married and has all these children, take him and kill him. Abraham says, no problem. That's what we learned last week. Any normal person, if he got a message from God saying, kill your son that you love so much, he'd say, find somebody else. Do me a favor, I'm not going to kill my son for you. Who's going to do it? Abraham said, no problem, right? I'm going to do what God wants, even if I'm going to lose everything. Choices, to make the right choices. We don't have to make, Abraham already made those hard choices. Unfortunately, there were a lot of Jews that had to make the same choices in the course of time. I don't know if this is true. You can check it up. I understand that Hitler was the only one that didn't give the Jews a choice. The church and all these people that murdered, who knows, maybe even more Jews than Hitler killed, but they gave a choice. You want to change your religion? We'll let you live. In the Crusades and in this and the Inquisitions. You want to change religion? We'll change. The Muslims for sure. How did Muhammad get to his greatness? He thought all the Jews would accept him. When they didn't, so he beheaded like 600 Jews, and then that shot him up to fame. Then his religion started to get popular, like killing Jews. But he gave him a choice. You get a choice, right? You get free choice. And a lot of Jews made the choice that I can't leave Judaism. I don't want to die, but Judaism, I'm never going to die. I'm never going to leave. Choice, difficult choices. That's the whole thing of this world. When a person makes the proper choice in this world, then that evokes pleasure from God. That's what you get in the world to come. In the world to come, you get a ray of God's pleasure that you got, because God is infinite. So you give God pleasure, it's there forever. Okay, so if so, that's what the pleasure, that's what you get in the world to come. Now, we'll do a couple more minutes over here. We started late. Now we have to understand how can the soul, which is only created, a soul is a physical thing, right? I have my soul, you have your soul, everybody has their own soul, but for the atzmo, how can the soul mesig this greatness of God that we can't grasp? What are we saying? The angels, they burn up the understanding of God, but the angels, they're just creations. When we go to heaven, we get a higher revelation than the angels do because of our good deeds that we did. So if the angels can't get this, how are we going to get this? Even though the souls, it says that the Jewish, now we're talking about Jews here, even though the Jew is a chelik elokam mimal, how it works exactly with non-Jews, I tell you the truth, I don't know. But I do know that the Maimonides says that a non-Jew that does the 7 Noahide commandments, and he does it in order to serve God, not in order to he does it to be a good person, as that he has a place in the world to come. But let's first of all talk about Jews. We'll talk about that, and I'll try to figure out about it. But the world to come you get. Okay, so it says, the soul, how can the soul possibly grasp this essence of God? Even though there's a soul, it says, is a part of God from above, Uderech Mashal is like a tipa, a zera, shenimshecha me'amoach, shelo yitachen lomor, shegam udenu b'mocho, hayata tipa zera gashmis. Ein kein haya nechsar me'amoach. The power of birth. Where does the power of birth come from? Right, the power of birth comes from the semen of the father, right? Says, well, that doesn't make any sense. How does that have semen? A little drop has the power to create a human being. How can it be? So it says, in that drop of semen of the father, there is the power of birth. right? Power of birth. So the power of birth, then it gives birth to people. Now we cannot say that the power of birth looks like the person that comes out of it. Can't be. So if so, we start understanding now that's a little bit sort of an idea of what spirituality is and what spirit, and now spirituality is only a creation. Don't think the spiritual is God, right? Don't think the spiritual is God. A lot of people have spiritual experiences, right? Out of the world experiences, Gnostic experience, whatever they call it, and they think that's God. I've seen the Lord, that's God. It's not so. That is not God. And that's only a spiritual experience. And because your soul is spiritual, so you can feel spiritual things, but that's not God. So the God is the power behind it. So the Rebbe says something like, for instance, we have life in our body. Our life is a human life. We feel life. Where does it come from? It comes from the seed from your father. That's where it originally came from. The seed from your father, it has also a power of life that enlivens, that's enclosed in that seed. That power of life is not in the shape of a human being, but nevertheless, it creates human beings. How does that come to be? This is what we're going to discuss, God willing, tomorrow.